So mercifully, drawing Animal Crossing characters is pretty straightforward, just because they have mostly famously simple shapes and designs. And Isabelle isn't really too much of an exception. She has some kind of funny details on her though, so keep an eye out for those. You want to start out with this really big, stonking, huge circle, pretty much in the middle of your page. And it's going to be a head, obviously. And then draw a line down the middle of it. But don't start exactly in the middle, if you know what I mean. You want to tilt it a bit to the side, because in this pose her head is a little bit to the side. Yeah, I thought we'd go for a little bit of challenge in this one, because Isabelle's not too hard to draw, may as well pick a tricky pose. So try and get this line just slightly, like, it's literally like 1 or 2 degrees from the middle. So start about here, try and bring it diagonally down to about there. If you can get that right, you can get pretty much the rest right. So what we're going to do, because of how simple his character is, we're just going to rush and draw the head straight away, and then we'll add the torso on afterwards. So it's helpful if, again, you divide it in half like this, so you get this, again, at an angle, so you get this kind of like 4-slice kind of deal going on. And if you do that, you'll know exactly where to place everything. So her nose sits in this spot, just below that kind of very, very central point there. And all it is just a little kind of rectangle. And then you can do a little smile here. Her smile's got this kind of funny shape to it. It's very distinctive to Isabelle. I don't think there's any other characters that actually have that kind of smile going on. You've got this kind of line at either side. It kind of hooks out. And then it just kind of like swoops down to about here. Doesn't quite get to the bottom. It'd be hanging off the face if it was. We don't really want that. And then underneath that, we want to draw this little kind of like semicircle for a tongue. And it's got a little buck tooth, very distinctive Isabelle feature as well. I don't think there's too many others that actually have buck teeth in these games. So now for her eyes sit perfectly above the very edges of the mouth, which is why we kind of jumped in and drew the bottom half of the face first. So you can just basically jump right in here and draw tall ovals like this, nice and high. They just kind of sit with the very, very bottom of the ovals kind of going through that guideline that you drew. And then on top of these, we need to draw those kind of, I guess they're eyelashes or eyebrows. They're just kind of like crescent moon shapes that sit at the very tops of her eyes, and you immediately get that very soothing kind of relaxed look that, again, is very trademark to Isabelle. And now she's got a little kind of blush either side of her cheeks. Let's add that in there, and a little space we've got. And now for her hair. So her hair starts about here. It's just above the kind of like halfway point of this line. About here. You bring it down, and it just, the first bang just kind of goes right over her eye like that. Goes up a bit, and then we can bring it out to the side of the head. End it about there, just shy of the end of the circle. Then you want to bring it straight up like this, up and out of the guideline. And end it about there. I've actually gone a little bit too high there. End it about there. So it's hovering above that spot there. And we want to do the same for the other side. I have picked an expression here that she's looking directly at us, so we don't have to worry about the face being too asymmetrical. So again, we'll just kind of bring this up so you can kind of get that symmetry going on, which makes the face a little bit easier to draw. The torso is going to be a little bit trickier because it's at an angle, but at least with the head you can have a bit of fun with it. Try and get that symmetry going on, like I apparently haven't. Try and get the hair pretty even. There we go. If it's not even, you can just quickly grab your eraser like I did and try and get it pretty balanced out. So now for the head shape. So her head isn't actually a perfect circle. The circle is just to guide all the features, and then we can draw the actual shape of her head around it, which we're going to do now. So starting just underneath this bit of hair here, we're going to come straight down. As we get to this line here, we're going to start to kind of bump it out into these big wide cheeks. It's got a really kind of funny shaped head. It's actually kind of like a bell shaped head, funnily enough. And you swing it down along the bottom side of that circle, out again like this. Again, it's very symmetrical. And bring it up to about here, and then underneath that hair there. And as you can see, we've pretty much nailed the shape of her hair here. It's kind of more narrow here, kind of where her brain is, small brain time, and then cheeks kind of coming out here. Now we can do the hair. So the hair, she's got like a little hairband here, so just draw a little semicircle there, because that's all we're going to see of it. And then there's like a big kind of bobble of hair like this, huge. It's kind of a double bobble actually. You draw one big bit here, and then you stop, and you draw a smaller bit behind it. Kind of looks like a bean, like a huge bean, just like resting on a head. And then we can just draw a little bit of the pattern here if you want to. You don't really have to at this point. You can save it for any color, but just for the sake of the drawing being a bit more clear, I'm going to add that in. Okay. And speaking of the others, we can actually add the white around her. I guess muzzle. She doesn't really have a muzzle though. It's too flat to be a muzzle. It's a lower face, I guess. Can add a little bit there. And now for her ears are super fun to draw. They're just big teardrop shapes either side of the head. And if all you wanted to draw today was Isabelle's head, well, you've already got there. But I'll tell you what, if you've got this far, you may as well draw the rest. So, the head's done. Let's move on to the rest of the body. So I recommend you start here, which is smack bang the center of the bottom of the head. Draw a line down to about here, okay? Not too far down. If you want kind of like a reference for how tall that should be, think it's about as tall as this plus a little extra, right? So think about this bottom half of the face, but like a little bit more. So maybe it's like 3/4 of the size of her head. If you stop there, you draw a straight line across for the hips, and then if you want at this point you can just draw kind of 2 very short lines down to help you remember where the legs are going to be. Those guidelines are very gently drawn in, they're just to tell us that the legs exist basically. So now we may as well start actually drawing the torso. So now that we've got a midline for the torso, and as you can see it's ever so slightly going to be pointing this way, we can draw this triangular shape. And it's not quite a triangle because the top of it's cut off, it's kind of inside of a head. But you want this kind of shape going on here. Very wide at the bottom and not so wide at the top. This is really traditional kind of cartoon stuff we're talking about. It's really common to have this kind of shape, especially in kind of feminine characters, where the shoulders are very drawn in and they're very narrow, but the hips kind of come out quite far. And once you've done that, we can add her skirt underneath it, give it a bit of a curve just so we have like a sense of motion going on. You see that? So it's kind of, it dips a little bit in the middle, maybe a little bit too much. You can definitely overdo that. There we go, let me just fix that for you. So it's quite a short skirt, only comes down to about her knees, maybe just kind of higher than her knees. I've got a torso going on. So now we'll pick a direction for the arms. Well, in the picture I'm using, her arms kind of like, one comes down here, it's got a little bit of a curve, just a slight curve, and the other one's pointing out like this, like yeah! And it actually goes into her ear, but don't worry, overlapping is oh so very common in drawing, so don't worry about that, we will tackle that shortly. But we may as well finish the pattern for a shirt, so I'm going to draw a little V shape. She's wearing like a V-neck shirt going on. And we've got this kind of like typical shirt thing where it comes down and then across but stops, and comes down and across again and ends at the bottom of the V. So I'll just do that again in reverse. We've got a full one and another one kind of sat behind it. Now this is not the bit where her shirt fastens, that is just the midpoint of her shirt. Where her shirt fastens is actually a bit to the side like this. You come away and you bring it down to the middle. You can add 4 little buttons like that, 4 little white buttons. And then she's got a pocket here. So you add a little circle, give it a bit of perspective, make it a little bit taller than it is wide. And if your fine art skills are up to scratch, I want to draw the little Animal Crossing logo in there. She's definitely a shill, Animal Crossing shill. And now for a sleeve. So we can just kind of draw this weird kind of, almost like an anime nose shape, where it kind of flicks out. It's got like a point, and it goes in and hides behind her torso here. And then you can just draw the rest of her arm, and her arm kind of looks like a Cheez-It. Just like a thick kind of like sausage sticking out of her arm. This is why Animal Crossing characters are so simple to draw. Their limbs have like no details at all. So you can just kind of like, just draw a sausage for an arm and it's done. And now for this sleeve, a bit trickier. You want to draw this kind of curve. This kind of C shape, it's like a backwards C shape. Stop it here, because that's where our arm's going to come out. But here, you want to kind of bring it back under and just connect it to the torso with a slight curve like that. You can't really do that wrong if you do it the other way. If you curve it the other way, it still looks fine, right? But I think it looks ever so slightly better if you curve it in like this. Maybe give it like a couple of lines like that to show it creases. If you want that realism going on. And now another kind of big sausage. How does she do secretary work with the sausage? How does anyone get anything done in Animal Crossing with these arms? What's going on? Another little tail here. So it's just like a funny shape that's very, very narrow at the end, and it's very thick here. And if you want to draw the fur pattern in, it's just kind of got that carnival kind of style going on where it swings up and down, kind of like bunting a little bit, I guess, maybe. And now we're pretty much done here. We've just got to do the legs. So I'll start with this one, because this leg's actually straight, it's actually on the floor. So you come down in 2 straight lines like this, and as you approach the bottom, you draw the heel, you bump it out a bit for the front of her foot, and you just join it up. Simple as that. And you want to add the shoe as well. She's not barefooted, she's not a total animal. So, no disrespect to anyone that walks around barefooted, but come on. The floor hurts people. And now this leg, you want to bring it down a tiny bit and then flick it out like that. You see that? You flick it out a tiny bit. And that comes down into the front of her foot. This bit is this bit. So you want to kind of bulge that out to about here, and then all you have to do is draw the knee and try and get those legs looking about as thick as each other. So however you made this one look in terms of width, try your best to get that looking the same. It's quite hard because it's folded and it's quite hard to see. But hey, you know, you've been watching this channel for a while, right? You've learned a trick or two. And we can actually get rid of some guidelines now, just to tidy it up if you want to. So this is a good point to go over all the lines you want to keep with like a Sharpie, or if you're working on a computer, you can just kind of like lower the layer opacity and then go over it again. I'm just going to get rid of all these guidelines here so it's a bit more clear for me to work with. We don't need this line, don't need this line. But yeah, this is pretty much ready to like ink, so you should go ahead and do that if you want. I'm going to go and do that myself, so I'll see you in just a moment.